Deonn Stott is here with us today to show us a little bit about quilting block basics. So welcome, Deonn.
Thank you so much.
So we are going to talk about basic quilting blocks, sewing squares together. Show me what we're going to work on today.
Well, today we're going to just explore some different ways to put squares together, and we'll end up making these 4 blocks in just a few minutes.
And these are really the basics of quilting: 4 patches, 9 patch.
Right.
So let's get started. What do you need to make these 4 blocks?
Well, what's fun about this project is that we don't need very much fabric. We'll use a 1/2 yard for background, and this is your blender's linen. And we'll use 2 coordinating fabrics, a fat quarter of one and a 1/3 of a yard of another piece.
Okay.
And we'll be able to make all 9 of those blocks.
Great. Well, show me how we get started on the 4 patch.
Okay, so for a 4 patch, you can take squares and sew them together and create your 4 patch. And that's pretty basic, but there are a lot more easy and fun ways to do that.
There is, isn't it?
So let's talk about strip piecing. And this is where you just measure 2, you take the width of your piece that you're using and make a longer strip.
And you can use
sew
the
those
width
together. You can
of
use
your
the
whole
width of your,
selvage to selvage, so you get long
fabric.
pieces and it's much quicker.
So if we sew this together, then we can chop it apart and it'll make it go so much faster.
Right, let's hurry and sew that.
So last time we talked about the seam allowance, we talked about pressing.
Yeah, how important it is to get that 1/4 inch seam accurate.
Right, and especially when you're doing a sampler, because not all of the blocks have the same amount of seams in them. And so you want to make sure you're as accurate and as consistent as you can possibly be. So let's press this, but I want to show you a little hint. If you'll take it to the ironing board with the seam allowance away from you and the darker piece of fabric up, and then press that so it sinks the stitches in, then it's easy to fold that away from you so you can get a nice crisp fold right there. And then we'll cut that apart
And it's ready
and
to
nestle
cut.
and make our 4 patch. So what I want you to do, since these are 2 3/4 inch squares we're aiming for, cut them, well, you'll trim off one end.
And we
even
did,
it up.
and last time we did a 9 patch and this 4 patch on our little project. So this will be a nice and neat
Okay,
project.
so we've squared up the end so she has a good line.
And you said it's 2
2
3/4.
So we'll cut 2 of those units.
Okay.
Good. And now if we alternate, we've already pressed these to the dark, and that seam will nestle in the middle. So right over
Like
left.
you say, kissing the seam.
Kiss the seam allowance, right, you nestle those.
And then you made this nice little pin cushion for me that we
Isn't
will
that
have a tutorial on Riley Blake's site of how to make this.
And then
I'll
I usually
just
go
pin
in one seam allowance and out the other.
Okay.
And go stitch that together.
Okay, here's our 4 patch, the basic quilting block.
Right, and now there were some tricks that we talked about last time. Do you want to show us that?
And that was called
The magic twist.
The magic twist. So
And
we
that just
turn
helps
that.
to distribute the bulk in that center seam. And here's where you press the center of it.
So we've got our little 4
And
patch.
just press it with the nose. And see how those seam allowances fan around kind of in a circle.
There we go.
Okay. And look how perfect that
That little
point is
center
right there.
Mhm.
That's just gorgeous. Great.
Okay, so we're going to do another one of that.
So now we need one more of these and then 2 plain squares. But
And then we'll sew it
I want to
together.
show you an inside-out way to make a 4 patch.
Okay,
Okay.
show me.
This one starts with 2 squares.
So this is just another method.
It's just
of how
another
to-
method of making squares. Okay, so it starts with 2 larger squares, and this time they're 1 inch wider than the finished size that we want.
Okay.
So 2 5.5 inch squares, and we're going to sew the outside seams on both sides.
Okay.
Okay?
Got our
Okay.
2 sides sewn.
Right, and so now we're going to cut it exactly in half, and then we'll have 2 segments that we can nestle and layer and stitch up.
Okay.
So get this out of your way.
So the
So
measurement on
it's
that.
5 1/2, and so we're going to cut it into a 2 3/4 inch segment.
2 3/4 right there.
Okay. So in each one is we saved a step.
Mm-hmm.
So each one is the same, and we'll press those as we did before. We'll nestle them both and continue on. Go ahead and press those. So this time we're going to nestle both and then cut them apart. And if you can feel with your fingers where that abuts against the next seam, then you can.
And then do pin it.
And then
Just-
actually we're going to cut it, chain piece it, and then we'll have 2 4 patches.
Okay.
So
And I
show me-
love chain piecing because
I do
it does
too.
not waste your thread and you don't have to stop and start.
That's right. Okay,
So, okay.
so those 2 nestle. Make sure they're alternating.
Do you trim them off? Because
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We'll trim them as soon as we have them nestled.
Okay.
And you can kind of feel with your fingers if that's flat.
Okay. Feels
Okay.
good.
So while it's there, then go ahead and trim the edge off and cut 2 3/4 inch segments.
I'll make sure that was straight.
Okay.
And we're going
Then
to
I
do.
usually use a line in the middle. Follow that
To
along
line
the seam
that up?
line. That also helps too. So we'll cut 2 of those sections, and we'll pin the intersection. I'm going to steal a pin here. And this time we'll chain piece. In other words, we're going to stitch through here, take a couple of stitches, and slide the next unit underneath.
Is it kind of like leaders and enders where you're just sewing one
Yeah.
piece after another one?
That's right, and it saves a little time, saves a little
Yeah.
thread. And
Yeah,
if you
that's much
have a
easier to
whole
stop and
stack
start
of these
quilting.
to do, then it goes really fast.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go sew. Okay, so we're just going to sew our first block. And I just remember when I learned how to do leaders and enders, it just made quilting so much quicker.
If your sewing machine has a needle down position, that's a really good thing to do whenever you stop. Okay, and then just continue on the next piece. Perfect.
So no wasting thread or wasting time.
Okay,
So we got our chain piece, and it's always nice that they're just all together.
isn't that great? And then just snip that apart, and then go ahead and press each of those, and we'll be ready to put our block together.
Do our magic twist. Now, what do you need for your block
Well, we
to
have,
finish this
Right.
9-inch block?
we'll have 2 5-inch squares, and then we'll add our 2 9 patches to it.
And you probably want them going the same way,
You do.
so that make a diagonal.
And so, no matter how careful I've been sewing or cutting this, I always want to check and make sure that it's still the size that I need. In this case, they're 5-inch squares finished or unfinished. And
Because even if you're off a little bit,
Yeah,
it can
and-
make a difference when you're
well,
doing an entire
you know,
quilt.
it's my happy place. You know, and that much difference isn't
Can add
much.
up.
It
if you're
isn't
doing a
much,
whole
but
quilt.
yeah, on a whole quilt, if you can have everything going for you before you even start putting it together, then your quilt will fit better. So I'll just take a minute and do this.
And square up. Don't want to get in
the
your
ruler
way.
to you.
Don't want you to slice off my finger, so I'll just
Exactly.
ease in there.
Okay, and that's also a way to check and make sure that, you know, you haven't missed a side or taken a too small or too large of a seam. Okay, do you want to do that one? And
Sure.
we'll sew this together.
Let's hurry and see if this is 5-inch. That looks pretty good on that side, but this side looks like we're off a hair.
I know that's really picky, but like I say, it's a happy place for me. I can start with exact
There we go.
squares. Nice.
So there we go. We're going to do a
Okay,
diagonal.
So, all right, and then when I make a block, then I always put the right side over the left, put a pin here, right side over the left,
So
put
I'll
a pin at the
mark that.
top.
Because that's important to know, because sometimes when you get your blocks and they're folded over, you're like, now which side am I
Somehow-
supposed to start
Yeah,
with?
somehow they switch places by the time you pick it up, go to your machine, and you've sewn the wrong side of the seam.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go sew these.
Okay.
Okay, so we chain pieced our block again.
Right, and because we did, we know exactly how it's supposed to look. Isn't that great?
There you go.
Okay, now when we go to press these, we'll press with this side up, so that when we press, we're going towards the plain piece of fabric. That way these don't have to double back on themselves and create more bulk.
And what's great is you don't have to cut that chain.
No,
you
you
can
really
just
don't.
flip it over
Mhm.
to sew.
That's all right. Okay,
So-
so press those. Remember to press the seam flat first.
Like this.
Uh-huh.
And we'll just pull it up.
Look how nice that
Flip
lies.
that over. Well, let's see.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
it.
just flip
Mhm.
that over like that.
Yeah.
Oops. Let's pull that up. Wants to turn on me. Well, it's turned, but we'll turn it back over when we flip it over here.
Right,
Let's
and the
see.
nice thing is that because we've pressed to the same piece, these are going to nestle just perfectly and make another really beautiful intersection there.
So now we just flip this
Mhm.
over. We're going to just add
Pin
a
your
pin right
intersections.
there.
I always pin my intersections. You can pin the beginning and ending if you want to, but that'll go through your machine really easily. Okay.
So here we go.
Oh,
We're
isn't
just
that
gonna
great? So we'll go ahead and press that, and
I
then
love
our
it when a
first block is
seam
done.
comes together.
Oh yes, I do too.
So we'll sink our stitches. And then
You
we'll
can do the
just-
magic twist if you want to. It's not
On
really
this?
necessary.
Okay.
Right. You just choose which way. Sometimes the fabric itself is going to tell you which way it needs to be pressed. Okay.
We got our first 9 patch.
All right.
Beautiful.
That's gorgeous. Look at those points.
So
I'm
what's
so
our
proud of
next
you.
one? Looks great.
Okay. Next, we're going to take three 2-inch strips and pretty much strip piece again, only this time we'll arrange them all 3 together, sew each of these seams, chop them apart, and then make another 9-inch
Okay.
4-patch.
So we'll sew them all together.
Mhm.
And then do you pin them before you sew them? Or when you're
not
going straight?
necessarily. There's not an intersection to worry about. I probably would just
Go ahead and sew.
put it
All right.
through the machine. Yeah. Okay. So we've sewn our strips together.
We're going to sink our stitches.
And then press that darker piece away.
To that.
Actually, go ahead and
Do
just leave it
that.
right side up. And the reason we do that is because when you're pressing seams from the back side, have you ever had this happen to you where you flip it over and you've got a little fold right there and you lose some fabric in your seam?
Mhm.
So that's why we sink the stitches first, press it away from the, or towards the dark. And then you get a really nice crisp seam, and not only that, but it's going to measure the right dimension when we finish.
And so
we
these
we
are
press
all
that all
going that
in one
way.
direction. Nice.
Okay, so what are the sizes again of these
So
strips?
we cut these in 2-inch strips by, well, actually the length of a fat quarter, which is usually 21 or 22 inches. We're going to use 5-inch squares, so we're going to cut them into 5-inch segments. So we need at least 20 inches. So,
And your white's not going to be in the middle. It's going to be on one side.
right, well, or you can put these in any order that you like. This is just, you know, how we designed it for today. So you'll
Okay.
square up one end and then cut them into 4 5-inch segments.
So 5-inch squares, right?
Mhm. And on a rail fence, you know, it can have 2 or 3 or up to 5 or however many rails you want. And then basically we're creating another,
So this block
Four
is
patch.
called rail
it's
fence.
called a rail fence. Ooh, and something you can check really fast here is because your seam allowances were correct, then the width of it is equal to the length of it, and these are going to fit together just perfectly.
We just have just enough to
Right.
get our blocks.
So here we are. There's our
Very
rail
good.
fence. Okay, and then right side over left, pin it where it's supposed to be on the right hand, upper right hand corner before you move it. And then I'll even stack them with the top block on this on top, so when I chain piece, it comes back the way
That
that
you
we laid
know.
it out. Right.
All right.
Okay, cool. One more seam.
And chain piecing
Yeah.
again just lines them up, doesn't it?
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Okay, so this time you have these seam allowances coming into this plain one. So we're going to press toward the plain. And then
Which-
again, those will nestle. I mean, it's a plain strip of fabric that doesn't have a seam allowance in it.
I see.
So they don't
Okay.
have to bend back on each other. So
All right. We'll go
press it, sew it, and then we'll be all done with that one.
So I'm going to press it into, is this where
Mhm.
it's going?
Yep, right toward
Okay.
the darker fabric.
And that's going on that side.
Cool.
So we are going to kiss those seams
That's right.
and pin it. Let's go
Okay.
finish this block. Okay, so we got our quilt block. We just need
Isn't
to
that
finish
great?
pressing it. Yes, so easy and
And
quick.
2 down.
So we'll sink our stitches.
Nice.
Okay,
Okay.
so that block's done. We got this block done. What's
Now we
our
got-
last block?
We're going to make 2 blocks at the same time. Okay, so we'll take 2 10.5-inch squares, and we're going to do the inside out piecing again, where we sew the outside seams and then chop it apart and then keep going. So these 2 will become 2 9 patches.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds easy enough.
so right sides together, and because it's such a long seam, we're going to pin those just because. So we'll stitch down one side here, and then we'll turn it around and stitch down the other side too. Okay,
So I'll just try and do those seams.
okay.
Okay. Okay, so we've sewn our 2 sides.
Okay, now we got to cut it into 3 sections, 3 3.5-inch sections.
All right, show
Okay.
me how it's done.
All right. So we'll measure 3.5 inches here, and this is also a way you check how your seam allowance is doing.
Line it up.
Mhm. And then go ahead and cut that. All right. Oops.
Got a look. Cut.
All right. Cut
Another
the
3.5.
center section, 3.5. A little more on the bottom. There we go. Oops.
Make sure it doesn't wobble on me.
Got one spot on your board. Okay, so now we have 2 sections that are sewn together.
And then this one just needs to be sewn.
And we're going to be adding, so we're making 2 blocks at the same time.
Okay.
So we're actually going to take this center section that's loose, and we'll add this to this one, and we'll add this to this one. So go ahead and
Fold over.
stitch those together. And we'll press after you've stitched these. Good.
Right. Okay, so we got our 2 blocks sewn.
Okay, and can you see how they're opposing?
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to press toward the dark on both of these blocks, and then nestle this in between here.
Cut
And
them
then-
up.
Then we'll sew the outside edges again,
Okay.
like we did at the first step. So first,
All right,
press.
let's press. Okay, let's sink our stitches. And then you what?
And then
Press it that way.
yeah, press it
Right.
so that the seam allowance goes underneath the dark area.
There we go.
Good job.
Do the same there. So we got that all ironed, and they're going inward.
Right.
And then this is going to go on the outside, right?
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so let's nestle those. And these seam allowances should line up. You can kind of feel if they're
Mhm.
flat or if they're okay. And then we'll pin these intersections here. And then this is the side that we'll sew is where we've pinned.
The outside,
Mm-hmm.
both outsides.
Right.
Okay, so let me just get those.
This is a real time saver. Can you imagine? If
This
you're making a big
is.
quilt
You could
and
do
sewing all those little tiny squares together, this saves a lot of time.
Here we
Good.
got those.
Sweet.
Okay, so we've sewed our 2 sides.
Right. And now we'll just cut it into 3 sections just like we did before. 3.5 inch sections.
So we'll line it up right there along our stitches.
Okay.
This is a time saver. If you can get this all accurate and good to go, make sure that's down. And then that measures. So good.
Okay, so open that one up. And we'll attach this one to the other side. So they make 2 opposing 9-patch blocks. 1 more seam on each one and we're done.
So we'll just put that over, pin our seams, and these are our last 2 quilt blocks for the day.
That's right.
Okay, so we did our chain piecing.
Love it.
Open it up.
Now we just have
need
to press these.
So let's give it a quick press. We've already pressed that side, haven't we? Sink our stitches.
Getting really good at that. Okay.
So we got our 2 quilt blocks to
Right,
add
and-
to our 2 others.
Don't you think that was a really quick way to make 4?
Absolutely. Look, no
Blocks?
time at all.
We're
And
almost
we've got
halfway
4
done
blocks.
with enough for a quilt.
And now, next time you're going to teach us what?
We're going to do triangles.
Triangles.
Yes, quarter square, half square triangles. Some fun and different ways to make those too.
and we'll be almost finished with our sampler quilt.
Right.
And so thank you, Deonn, for these great tips on basic block making, and join us next time.
Thank you.